Hello. So, in a previous live stream, we went through the process of actually recording podcast episode, and now it's time to get it edited. So, uh, let's just dive right in. Here I have Mixcraft open, and if you've seen any of the audio editing sessions before, this one's going to be very similar, except this one, of course, is for a different episode. So, uh, rinse and repeat as far as process is concerned. It's just a little bit different what the actual things are that we're editing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my effects chain that I've built out. So my effects and then a master effects over everything. That's going to add a little bit of compression to it. Just stuff that I've kind of done over the years that I like for my voice. And then it's time to start editing. So the basic process here is something that we've looked at in previous videos. But the basic process is I'm going to find any of these here where I stopped and started recording. That's going to be an edit point. And it looks like my system's at 100%. Let me see if actually I can pause syncing, see if that'll help on Google Drive. Hopefully that doesn't hurt the stream too much. Whatever's using up my CPU there, it's probably Google Drive in the background. So anyway, yeah, let's dive in.
Today we're
So you can see I repeated that part there, and so that's just the basic process here.
Today we'll look at the anyway.
And this, so get rid of that little breath.
Anyway.
And it's almost mid-sentence, but not quite, so I'm going to have to move it pretty close so it's not a normal
Stretch. Anyway, today we'll
Oh, that's too much.
Anyway, today we'll look Anyway, today we'll look
There we go.
Josh adapted the life of Neil Armstrong. That book is also Josh
It's in.
Josh Spotlight. Josh.
Bit of a break there. One thing I want to make sure I do, leave that intro part. I cut that in. I didn't really want to do that. I'm going to use that later as a noise print to get rid of some of the background noise. Just a little bit of a hiss from system stuff.
Before starting our story, are you ready to based on a true
So my intro. And then this is going to be, I guess, the two truths and a lie here.
Were
Yeah.
Number three. The Apollo 11 mission. Number 3. Apollo 11 mission. Number 3.
A little bit of a break there. Typical, sentence break that you might expect. Okay, that's the end of that. And then this starts the actual episode. So, intro, and then the little. So I like to. I've done this for. Gosh, I don't remember. I didn't do it when I first started the podcast, but it was maybe 7 or 8 months after. So maybe a couple years, over 2 years now. I've done two truths and a lie. It's just it's a fun way to kind of encourage listening and paying attention, and you're looking.
His family
For the lie. The funny thing is, I'll get a lot of comments. Listeners come in and be like, "Oh no, that didn't happen. That didn't happen," because they think that what I mentioned, because it's two truths and a lie, right? So one of them is going to be a lie, But the thing is, I don't mention, so like I only mention throughout the episode, I only mention the two truths. But I mention, obviously, in order to do two truths and a lie, I have to make one of them a lie up to begin with. But I say that it's two truths and a lie. One of them is a lie. And I've actually gotten a lot of comments. People get super, super pissed off that, oh man, you said this and it's obviously not true and you shouldn't do that. I'm like, it's kind of part of the game, two truths and a lie. And if you had listened to the end of the episode, you would know I say that one is the lie. Like, I never mentioned it throughout the episode. That's the one that's the lie. Some people get really, really upset.
His family in Wapakoneta. His family stayed in Ohio after graduating. It's not too surprising. That's a program. After graduating,
cut that in. Oh, nice. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but it sounds like
to Purdue. After
someone outside just decided to start mowing. Isn't that the way it works? As soon as you start to record something.
Neil Armstrong.
Of course, since this is a live stream, I can't really stop it. If I were recording this episode of the podcast, I would just stop and then wait until it comes back, until they're done.
Neil Armstrong in the Korean War. That kicked off.
That's weird.
Neil Armstrong did training.
Through that whole clip.
Change his college after graduate. Partnered on August. Started college in 1949. The third.
I have a feeling that's just a system thing.
That kicked off.
I'll set myself a note to check that. I think that's just a playback thing. I don't think it's actually in the audio. I mean, the waveforms look fine, but I'll check that later. So after this, this episode won't be coming out for a while yet. But I typically like to be working about a month or two ahead of time if I can, and so one of the reasons for that is because there's the recording and you saw when I recorded this, and then the editing part, and then I'm still going to have to go through a QA phase and listen to it and have some other people listen to it and just double check and make sure that there's nothing that needs to be fixed.
Back in the movie.
So I'm going to give a little bit of time for that. So it's not like I can, edit this and have it up tomorrow.
Back in the movie.
I mean, I guess I could, but be prone to have mistakes in it.
Over the radio.
Not that there still can't be mistakes that make it in. Sometimes there are, but that's...
Over the radio.
We are all human, and that's the way it goes. Sometimes mistakes happen, even if you check and double check and triple check, and it'll happen. Control S, save.
Through some stellar... off the atmosphere. Through some stellar piloting. That's just over 7,590 feet that day. That's just over. One thing the movie doesn't. Outside the Earth's atmosphere. One thing the movie doesn't mention. And as amazing as
instead of and as amazing
times the speed of sound. And as amazing back into the movies.
Yeah, see, you can see it's doing it again.
Back in the movies.
I think that's just a system thing. The system still, it's not quite peaking out, but it's still cranking on something in the background.
By a winged vehicle into space. Back in the movies. Timeline. The camera cuts back in.
Can't hurt to double check things, just to be safe. Anytime that I've noticed that sort of sound before, it's usually a system thing that's just the system's overtaxed, and it's really just a playback thing, really.
Unfortunately, in January of Karen's caught. I'm reminded of the unfortunately.
So.
To treat the young child.
Now, if it is an issue, if it does become an issue,
Child.
I'll just have to re-record those parts. There's really no way to fix that sort of thing other than just re-recording it, and then I'll edit those in. So.
Prior to April of the reason for that simply had prior to April of 1960. Prior to to civilians. Prior to April of Fortunately, one of the June 1st. Fortunately, though, one of the guys that Neil worked with at Edwards Air Force Base.
Launch this and see what's using up my CPU. You see it cranked up there. Yeah, see, it's XSplit. Which, if I want to broadcast, there's not much I can do with that.
June 1st. Fortunately, though,
at some point, I'll probably just need to update my system. So this system that I'm using here, I've updated over the years, but...
Well, I couldn't find... But we do know from history that it was 1 month...
Yeah, see, it's in the system.
Well, I couldn't find anything...
I mean, this computer's still, so... 7 or 8 years. Actually, probably more like 8 or 9 years.
Astronaut. Well, I couldn't find any...
That's how old this computer is. I mean, I've updated it. So I've updated the graphics card, I've updated the memory. And
Neil was one of... The other was... The other man that we... Neil was one of two. Neil was...
But eventually. Hopefully, here soon, I should be able to...
Second group of astronauts. Neil was one of...
afford a new system. All that costs of running a show.
Back in the movie, played by Patrick Fugit. Back in the movie after joining Fugit. Back in the movie after... His name is Mark. Boy. His name is Mark. Basically, both countries... This back and forth... Basically, both... As the space race. Basically, both countries... Meanwhile, the crew... As a result of this... Meanwhile, the... Kernan. Meanwhile, the crew planned for Gemini 10. Neil and going back to the movie, there's Neil and another astronaut. Neil and another astronaut named of a friend. Neil and
it's funny, you know, you can it's easy when you're talking, but when you're actually sitting down to record and record things, a lot of times you can have the words in front of you, you know exactly what you're going to say, and something else comes out. And hopefully you can catch it before it goes live, but sometimes that's the way it goes.
They managed to get moment of what has to be a. They managed to get. They man. Sure. They managed to get. However, they weren't however, they sixth flight. However, they weren't sixth flight. However, they flight. Flight. However,
give it a little bit of a lip smack.
Flight. However, they weren't able to complete. First, they were supposed to dock. First, they were. Gemini 8 mission. First, they were supposed to dock. Once docked, the 8. Once docked. Dashboard. Once docked. On the dashboard. Once docked, the
So I just pull a few different files over and then just kind of pull from here until we get to the end. Just working on a couple at a time.
When the rolling begins, you can't expect a normal air. You can't, since the flaps. When the rolling begins, range of communications with the ground. When the rolling began, the two. Now, since you can't expect a now, since you can't expect. Now, since you can't. The Gemini was back around this time. The communication, it worked. The Gemini was back in. Blackout was over. The Gemini was back in range. The rest of the mission had to. The rest of the mission had. Their fuel left. The rest of the mission had to be aborted with 5% of their fuel left. For re-entry, and now they only had about 25. The rest of the mission had to. This time, back in the movie, tragedy strikes someone. This time, Neil.
It's strange.
Again. This time, Neil is at the.
That it happens sometimes on different clips like that.
Those were for re-entry. The rest of the mission had. Those were for
Makes me wonder if it's actually in the audio. If it is, I'm going to have to re-record this episode. That's fun.
Hearing the news on the.
You know what? Let's check that before.
All three astronauts. Hearing the news.
Let's check that before we go too much farther. So let's do this.
To the Armstrongs' home.
I'm just going to export a little bit.
Back in the movie's timeline week.
Yeah, I think I might.
She responds by to the Armstrongs' home. Neil is patting his young as she cries. She responds by sort her and plays with her to calm her. She cries. Neil comforts her and
I think that might actually be in the audio. Well, that sucks. That's going to be a yeah. Let me just completely get out of Mixcraft, not have that even running anymore, and watch Audition. See if I can see it in the waveform. There's no point in continuing with the edit. I should have checked that. I mean, that's part of the process. I've never had that happen before, but I know I did live stream that one, so I wonder if there was something in the live stream that it was eating up CPU and caused it to. Man, I mean that. Yeah, that looks like it's actually in the audio. You can see right there. Wow. Just the speakers.
her and plays with.
Yep.
Comforts her and play
Well,
some sort. As she cries, Neil comforts her and plays with her.
so you can see it. It's actually in the waveform. That has to be it. The only thing I think of, the only thing I've done different with this episode that I've done before was I did the live stream for it. So it has to have been something in there. So until I can get that figured out, I might not be able to do many more live streams of actual recording sessions. I mean, once it's recorded, if the editing session, if it eats up CPU or whatever, it might choke the stream a little bit, but at least the audio is still good then on the actual episode.
And play,
But
comforts her and play.
So yeah, you can see that's just going to be a showstopper right here. So there's no point in editing the rest of this episode. I'm just going to have to re-record, and I don't know where all it's at, since it was kind of sporadic. So there's no point in going in and trying to find all the different parts of what are going to cause the issue. I might as well just go ahead and re-record the entire thing. And that's not going to be something that I can do while I'm streaming it live, apparently, because that seems to cause issues. So at least until I can try to get that figured out, I'll run some tests and try to get it figured out. So hopefully I can get things up and running again as far as streaming while recording. But well, that's a shame. It's the first time that's ever happened, actually. Never had that issue before, but sometimes you have issues and you got to work around them. It's one reason to work ahead of time. So I'm glad this episode isn't coming out for a while, because if I was supposed to release that tomorrow, probably wouldn't happen. I don't know if you can hear it on the microphone, but there's still people mowing outside. There's still noise going on outside, so I'm not even going to attempt to sit down to record this right now. I'm going to have to wait for a little while to record that. So thanks for sticking with me. I'm just gonna end this stream here. Thanks for sticking around, and if you're watching this, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll get back to this. We'll be able to actually do an edit here when this is re-recorded, and deal with some audio that is actually good. So bye for now.